Yeah. Good morning. Oh, there it is. Good morning, all. How are we? Good. Happy Friday. Oh, it says we're muted still. Oh, maybe not. Will somebody on Zoom give me a thumbs up if you can hear us all? Anyone out there? Oh, thumbs up. Thanks, Ash. Okay, let me get the presentation going. So thank you all for joining us. We are here to present on S&A-based funding updates as we end out fiscal year 25 and into fiscal year 26. So we have some information to share, and then we will open up the floor for questions if y'all have them. This is being recorded, and we do plan to put it out on the website once I get the recording from Zoom afterward. So our first speaker is the lovely Joel Plucking, our CFO, and he's going to just report on some overall university budget. You want to click through, or would you like me to? Okay, I'm going to just. Oh, there you are.
Good morning, everybody. So I'm just going to have a couple of slides here. If you were at the staff town hall, they're going to be the same. Some of the same slides, but maybe with an S&A slide to them. All right, so we're going to close out fiscal 25 to start with, right? So this is how the operating funds of the university ended up for fiscal 25. The red bar going across is how much money we brought in through revenues, and the black is the expenses, so how we spent the money. And you can see it's pretty tight in almost all of the areas on campus. The first one is student activities, and that is S&A is part of the student activities. It's about $5 or $6 million worth of revenue and expenses. The rest comes in through CIRC and rec fees to make up that $11 million. And of the $11 million that came in, we spent nearly all of it. We kind of knew that would happen just because of the last quadrennium and we were taking budget cuts and that type of thing. So it was actually budgeted to lose a little bit. So this actually was a better outcome than we thought we would end up with at the end of the year. And a lot of that's because of salary savings and just money that was unspent from all the different areas.
Sorry, Joel. Their Zoom friends can't hear us very well.
Oh. Sure, I'll talk more. I've never been called lovely before. So thank you. Yeah. Is that better?
Ask Megan. Megan was the one who texted to say.
Megan, can you hear better?
A little. I think you'd have to talk a little more for me to know for sure.
Can you hear me better now?
That's better. Other Zoom participants? Is that a little better?
I'm a terrible mic speaker, so that's probably it.
Okay. Try again.
Okay, so the rest of the institution, as far as operating expenses go, also brought in a little bit more than they spent. Enterprise is housing, dining, bookstore, parking. They actually had a budget to come in somewhere around the 1.7. So they performed as they were expected. Local general and state general performed a little bit better than expected. And again, this is due mostly to salary savings, and in the case of the state general fund, we thought that would come in below with a slight loss. But through supplemental session, we got some state funding that we weren't expecting related to inflation. Here's a look at the operating margin. So this is the sum of revenues minus expenses for the last 8 years of actuals, and then a forecast for the budget for 2026. And it's really two different stories here, right? Pre-pandemic, from 2018 to 2021, we had these were our peak enrollment years, where obviously there were a lot more students participating in things that were generating revenue. And in that time frame, we generated almost $19 million worth of net. Now that we actually spent more than that $19 million in investments across the university. So we helped fund an in-house aviation program with some of that money. We did the rec center expansion with some of that money. We did a complete remodel of Stevens Whitney with a bunch of that money. So that's the kind of net margin that we actually need to have to be a healthy financial institution. And then the 4 years after that, from 22 to 25, it's been pretty much zero. So we've survived. We have gotten by through salary savings and that type of thing, but it doesn't leave money for investing in housing, or the rec center needs some updates. And you all know there's more ways that we can use money than we currently have money to use. And so we hope that as enrollment slowly goes up, that this will improve over time. But right now for fiscal 26, we have a $2.8 million deficit in the state general funds. That's offset by we do expect to generate this kind of the same amount as fiscal 25 in all the other areas, but it's really state general that's dragging it down right now. And that will change as we get more information on total enrollment and the headcount that we have on campus. Here's just a look at the entire university budget. So we actually bring in $354 million, or at least that's what we're planning on bringing in for fiscal 26. A large chunk of that, $119 million, is through the non-operating funds. So we don't have a lot of discretion on how to spend this money. Much of it comes from the state of Washington through the capital allotment. So we have to build a building because that's what they gave us the money for. But that's also true for grants and contracts. That's federal research grants that we told them we were going to do something. We have to spend the money on that activity. But the big chunk of that federal grants is Pell Grants and state need grants, where it's just, we have no discretion that goes to students who qualify for it. So we really focus a lot more on the operating funds, and those are it's hard to see maybe on this screen, but the colorful slices of the pie, and the black and gray shaded areas are the non-operating funds. So it's no surprise that the core business of the institution is teaching and learning, and so that's where most of the money goes in the operating funds, $147 million of the $235 million in operating funds that goes there. Student activities, $11 million. That represents about 3% of the total $350 million. And within that student activities, it's about $5 or $6 million worth of S&A fee that gets allocated around. It's about somewhere around 1.5% of the total university budget. So in the grand scheme of things, it's a fairly small sliver of the total institutional funding. And here's a look at the operating fund groups. Again, these are the core business activities of the university: teaching and learning, housing and dining, student activities, and the money that comes into the institution, that $235 million, and then how it's spent out. And in 2026, we expect that about 70% of our costs will be employee costs, right? It's full-time student employees, benefits, all of that type of thing. 30% is goods and services, and the vast majority of that goods and services is happening in enterprise funds. So we have a lot of fixed costs related to housing, utilities, repairs and maintenance. We have a $12 million bond payment that we have to include in there as well. So the discretion, although we have a lot more discretion with operating funds, 70% of it is locked up in employee costs. And non-operating, you can see the big difference here. 93% is goods and services. This is because we're buying a building or we're doing financial aid grant. And so it's hardly any employee costs in the non-operating group. Further questions, or saving that for the end? Okay.
All right. All right, let me just add these few folks in the waiting room. Okay, so I'm just going to transition to talking about just some reminders about S&A policies and then just kind of update you all on where we are with some of the policies. So there was proposed S&A changes in spring from the committee upward, and over the course of the summer, we submitted those changes up to Thomas Peterson, who's in charge of our PPIS updates. The president has approved those, but the policy actually hasn't been posted for everything yet, but I just wanted to share with you all what those changes were. So of course, clearly we don't have a Dean of Student Success, so a lot of the changes were name changes. We needed to change it to the VP of Student Engagement and Success. Student Government had changed their name in a few years, so instead of Board of Directors, it's CWU Student Government. So just most of the changes on the policy were that. We also added in about public comment. We wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity that Erin and I, as the S&A advisors, had the ability to make sure that business still got conducted, so allowing public comment to, of course, take place, but make sure that we know that business still needs to be conducted when we have a meeting. The other thing, or the biggest change in my opinion, is that we decided to add in like a week period. So from the time S&A deliberates and provides the recommendation to student government, there will be a week in that time where areas can provide feedback back to us. So was something completely incorrect and that we need to reconsider? Was something done incorrectly and you want to clarify an answer that S&A has? So this is a 1 week period in which, after the recommendations are published, the funding areas can provide feedback back to the S&A committee. We will convene again, and then, sorry, you're good. We will convene again, and then make any changes the committee feels necessary, and then again provide the recommendations back to student government with any changes, as well as to Joel and Vero for the final recommendations to move upward. So just again, reminding everybody that what we're providing is recommendations and that it has an approval process from there. And then the last thing is we will also be providing, along with our recommendations, is supporting documentation to student government and then to eventually Joel and Vero on the reason, the findings or the reason behind the recommendations. So just so everybody kind of knows, it's just a new change that was proposed in the policy that student government voted on. Okay. And ideally this takes place the first week of March. So after, and I'll go through the timeline a little bit, but basically after everybody presents, we'll deliberate, and then our first round of recommendations get sent out by the first week in March, so that there's plenty of time to take a look at it, convene the committee again before spring break, and all those other dates and deadlines take place. This one's you.
Okay. Yay. My turn. Hi, everybody. So the next thing that came up is salary savings. As you know, in the past, we have had those salary savings revert back to sort of covering the deficit that was created during the allocation. The good news here for the S&A budget is that we are flat, where we expect the spending this year to stay within the current year revenue. So all of those salary savings will be rolling back into supplemental and be able to be reallocated for other purposes that fall within the supplemental funding guidelines. As far as salary increases go, the final word came out, it's going to be $17.13 per hour, which impacts a lot of the areas that have student employees. So the intent will be to submit a supplemental request that covers all of those areas, so we don't have everybody individually doing that, and that will be probably sometime in the winter. As far as carry forward goes, what occurred during COVID, we had all of the carryover roll back at the end of the year. That's part of the policy update this year, so that's going to continue, and then that will be part of the allocation the following year. Any fund that is overspended by the end of the year, that deficit will carry forward for them, and that would essentially reduce your available funds for the next year. In addition, any account that has a deficit is going to need to come to S&A to talk about their plans, spending plans to correct that, and maybe discussing kind of how it happened. And then reallocation or supplemental funding requests to cover those deficits do need to come through the committee. So if you have an area with multiple budgets, you're not able to move that money between those, you'll have to come and get permission for that. So, of course, supplemental funding requests are only eligible for base funded areas. And really in the policy, to constitute as a supplemental funding request, it really should be made when circumstances arise that were outside of the initial planning when you did your base funding request. So, you know, examples of that could be, you know, my computer got fried from no surge protectors, things like that. They're really unexpected. And then for approval, we'll need to sort of implement a better communication policy this year to make sure that appointing authority, dean, budget manager, vice president, that chain of command has been followed in order to get to the supplemental, so everybody's aware. And then currently, the supplemental budget of $78,711 is what we have, and that is based on the amount of revenue that we have coming in and less the budgeted expenses. So that's probably not a number that, what did I say, 68?
78, but it says.
Oh, I'm sorry, I medium glasses. It is 78, or 58, I'm sorry, 58,711. And that is the difference between what we expect our revenue to be and minus what we have allocated out for all of the areas to expend. This is not a static number. So this number is going to change throughout the year based on if you have an open position somewhere, then that salary savings will roll back and increase this budget. I would expect it to go up quite a bit from here, but we're going to recommend for the committee to stay within their spending limits and to not overspend the budget. 58,711. And then this is just a list of all of the areas that are currently receiving base funding. The prior request column, this is what the previous quadrennium budget unreduced was. This is what was asked for this year, and this is what was allocated out. So I'll give you a minute to look at that.
Okay, so let's talk about next steps. I think everybody knows that the Board of Trustees last year approved the funding for 1 year, which means we get to do the base funding request process all over again for the next 3 years. So I just want to kind of go over the timeline. It does not change from what you all have done in the past, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So annual report, so what's due December 1st, same things as always. An annual report must be submitted, again going over how the funds were used, provide any additional information, students served, data you have, data. We keep hearing that in every meeting I'm in at least. You got to show your data. So make sure you have that. As Aaron mentioned, any approved transfers from one account to another. And then, of course, talking about any funds you have in addition to your S&A funds. So something Aaron mentioned, like the sub fee or the rec fee, those types of things. You also have to provide an annual financial statement. So Aaron can help with that as far as where your money has been spent and how and those types of things. And then lastly, your new request for the next 3 years. So we're just, again, same process as last year, except for the funding will be allocated for the next 3 years, which then gets us hopefully back on a quadrennial cycle at the end of 29. And that'll all come to me. We'll have everything live. I'll send reminders. and then similar process, which jumps us into the committee. So once that's all submitted, Erin and I will spend the month of December setting up times with everybody to come and present to the committee, similar again to what you all have done in the past. And then there'll be time, again, reminder, it's a 10-minute presentation with a 10-minute Q&A. So we are in the process. Alex is our new VP, so he will be stepping in to help us get committee members. If I remember correctly, we have 9 who've submitted interest. Yes, okay, great. So the policy says we can have 9 to 13. Of course, we would take a few more, but so the 9 will be submitted to the CWU Senate this coming Monday. Once the Senate says, yes, we recommend these, then it'll go back to the Student Government Board of Directors the following Monday, and then it will go to Vero and Mia for final approval and appointment. So those letters come out of the VP's office after they run their typical processes for assigning students to committees. So if all of that comes around in our timeline, we should have our first meeting the 3rd week of October, and the first 2 meetings are training. And then, so that puts us having our first official meeting the 1st week of November. So that is when we will have an official public meeting that 1st week in November. Okay, that's what we have. I know there's going to be questions, and I know everybody hates it, but we're going to ask you to talk into the mic so that our Zoom friends can hear, and also the recording we found. So I've got my mic runner shoes on, not really. Anybody want to start? Okay, right.
So I had a couple of questions just in terms of timeline. I know you said the public meeting is going to be on the 1st, and that we have 1 week of feedback after the committee hears our proposal. Does that mean that week from hearing the proposal to the decision is the week that we have, or that there's going to be an additional week in there?
No, it's, may I respond in then? So once the recommendation is made, it's sent to you all, you have a week to give us feedback until our next meeting, and then the feedback is heard and the recommendation is either made a change or not made a change before it gets sent out to student government, Joel, and Vero.
In that same meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes. So the other question that I had, you mentioned supporting documentation was going to be different this year when we submit our supplemental requests, and in traditionally we've had to submit the presentation and an itemized budget. Can you elaborate on exactly what documentation you're looking for?
Yeah, my apologies. There's no documentation change in submission. It's just that when you submit the S&A or the supplemental request, it asks, has your budget manager, VP, dean, chair been notified? And then we ask for the name of that person to make sure that we can invite them to the meeting.
Gotcha. I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? No, that's all. Oh, Wanda. And then we'll jump over to Zoom and see if
The board is going to be meeting the same week that the Senate looks at the applicants, so we'll call a board meeting to look over the applicants that same week. So we'll try to get them done as soon as we can.
Yeah, I forgot that you did mention to me. The student, once Senate approves the recommendations, the board of directors is going to hold a special meeting that same week so we can get moving on the committee appointments quicker. Thank you for that clarification, Wanda. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and see if any of our Zoom friends have questions. Okay, anybody online would like to unmute themselves and ask a question?
I have a question, and this is kind of related, but when does the supplemental process begin?
You can submit right away. Mal, it's online currently. Anybody can submit right away. We wouldn't be able to get you on the meeting until our first meeting, which will be the 1st week of November.
Okay, thank you.
It's funny to use the microphone when I'm looking at Erin. Can you tell us what the mechanics of the salary savings will be? Like, let's say we have 3 months worth of salary savings. Are you going to pull that back quarterly? How long are you going to keep it in our budgets if we're not using it?
Good. I'll come sit right next to you to answer. The process is going to be monthly, and so that money will roll back, and then we'll be able to report it back to the S&A committee so that they can reallocate it. But it will be, if you have a half a month, the policy is written that it's 1 month. So I'll probably be looking at the position reports from CAT plan to kind of determine that, and I'll reach out to you to make sure that, you know, there's not something I'm overlooking.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, of course.
I have another question.
Go ahead, Mal.
So, regarding the money that's salary savings, is that something that can be asked to be returned in a formal process, or how does that look?
So the salary savings will roll back, and then you are able to go and request a supplemental funding request. You could mention that in your request, but they're sort of separate.
Does that include something that you're doing an active search for, or is it just stuff that isn't going to be filled or hasn't been filled for a longer period of time?
It is for any unused salary by month. So for every month that you have an empty position, then it rolls back.
And is that month on the based on the date of the actual month, right? Or is it like pay period, or is it?
I mean, there's a cost benefit analysis to be had probably if you were looking at number of days. But it would be basically every 30 days or 31 days, or is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Or I guess I'm thinking, is it prorated based on what point in the month that you start using it again, or anything like that, or is it?
No, I mean, I think if you started somebody in the middle of the month, then you wouldn't lose that because it wouldn't be 1 month's worth of salary.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With the us having to do the requests in the winter quarter for the 27 to 29, should we be looking at like we did last year, where we should be looking at our budgets and presenting it with an expectancy of like a 15-20% cut like we did last year? Does that change? Like so we can figure out how to prepare that request.
So I'm very happy to say that we are not doing a 10%, 15% reduction. Where it's at right now, if you want to go back to that, where it's at right now, we don't expect any additional revenue. Any fee increase is really probably going to be offsetting inflationary costs. I don't have any information suggesting that the number of the 5.6 million will be significantly different. With that said, we'll probably have other areas that are asking for different amounts, and so how it's spread out over here might change. I would say the same thing as last year, like you have to ask for what you need, but just realizing that 5.67 is probably pretty close to what they'll have to allocate.
So I have a scenario that I just could use some clarification on. For departments who have taken a bigger hit for this year, if we propose a supplemental request for salaries, but for say the year, and 1 quarter or so we don't fill a position, would we still receive that money as the salary savings, or is it because it's a supplemental request that money just would never be deposited into the accounts?
I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna let you answer.
This is for full-time staff salaries. So in your budget is only student salaries, so that would, I mean, you can kind of look at your student wages as part of like your goods and services budget. If you didn't have students working 1 month, you could have more students working the next month. But we're talking about full-time staff salaries as far as the rollback.
Gotcha, sorry.
No, you're good. That's a good question. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just triple check one last time that none of our Zoom friends have questions, and if not, as mentioned, feel free to reach out to Erin and I. We'll be sharing all of this information to you all so you have it, and then you'll be hearing from us again as the committee kicks off, as well as before December 1st to remind everybody of their budget presentations and then I'll work with you all on dates like I normally did. We do not know when the meetings are going to be yet, clearly, because we don't have the committee formed yet. Hopefully not Fridays at 5:30, but the student schedule is an enigma to me, so I will do whatever needs to be done. So we appreciate you all coming, and again, if you have other questions you'd like to stay and ask Joel or Vero or Aaron and I would be happy to answer. Thanks for coming.